How easy is it to tell the difference between COVID and the common cold?
When you feel that you're capable of getting up and about again and contributing back in society, surely you should go back to work. Otherwise, we're all going to be isolating forever.
Winter is coming and we could be in for the perfect storm. The Chief Executive of the UK Health Security Agency.
If you do have symptoms, you need to isolate until you have the result of your PCR test.
Maybe you're suffering from it right now. A lot of people are saying if they've got this cold, they've never had one as bad.
And then the workforce, which could handle one person being off sick, then has to deal with a load of people off sick.
No, of course we should go to work with a simple cold. I mean, if we've got a fever, we've got a hacking cough, and we're clearly infectious with a bad dose of flu, stay in bed, stay home, protect everybody.
Public health officials investigate claims by GPs in the southwest of patients who have COVID symptoms, but they get negative PCR test results.
I should probably start this video by apologising for making you watch Richard Madeley there, and I should probably apologise also for not putting a video out for quite a few weeks. Possibly, I should imagine some of you, like me, the last 2 to 3 weeks have been off sick with this super cold thing that's going around. Now, from what I can work out, it turns out it's not really worse than normal. It's just that obviously over the last 18 months to 2 years, we've been defending ourselves from this COVID bug, and as a result of wearing face masks and all the hand washing and just basically not socialising, obviously our defences are down. It turns out that we need to kind of expose ourselves to nasties to be able to combat the nasties. So this cold that everyone's been having is just a normal cold. It's just that we're not as defensive to it as we normally are. Now, if you've had this super cold, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You can probably still hear it a little bit in my voice now, but essentially I don't think I've ever been as ill as I have been over the last couple of weeks. I sort of had a couple of days off work for the first time in decades, really. Although I worked from home, and essentially it was to make sure that I had a PCR test. Now, therein lies the dilemma of what I wanted to talk about today. You see, I've been brought up with a self-employed attitude. I've pretty much been self-employed for the last sort of 25 years. I became employed at the university, I think just over 2 years ago, and it's my first proper job really, with all the benefits that come from a proper job. Sick pay, holiday pay, maternity, paternity, all those things you don't get when you're self-employed, all those beautiful things. And it's always been my mentality really that unless you're flatlining, unless you're they're pulling a blanket over your head, you should be going to work, because ultimately if you can work, you should work. And that's always been my mentality, and I have worked through some horrendous illnesses in the past, and there's a level of martyrdom to that, isn't there, that I think maybe not everybody has. Some people will take a day off at the first sign of sickness. Now, times have changed. This is what I had to realise a couple of weeks back, really, that times have changed, really. This isn't just about turning up to work because you're conscientious, the fact that it impacts other people. If I don't go to work, I have to contact my line manager, who then has to find someone to cover my lectures, which is not easier said than done, and that obviously has an impact on my students. So, we could be talking over a day or 2 days. It could be impacting several hundred people's times, really, and I don't like that. It's not my mentality to have that kind of impact on people's lives. I much prefer to put myself out to make life easier for others, and I think that's a decent way to go about things, but you can't do that anymore. One of the reasons why I had to take that time off is because I had to take a PCR test. Even I wasn't sure by the time my PCR test result came back that what I had could have easily been COVID. My chest was horrendous. I couldn't go up the stairs without being massively out of breath. I had hacking cough. It was all sitting on my chest and in my throat. It was genuinely horrible. So obviously that's impacted training. Just as I was building up a really good head of steam with the swimming and a little bit of running, that all had to come to a sudden stop. But this is all for the greater good, really, isn't it? Without citing too many hot fuzz lines.
How can this be for the greater good? The greater good. Shut it!
The idea that, if I had COVID or even with a bad cold and I go into work, somebody else could get that from me, and that could impact them and their loved ones even more. And obviously I'm acutely aware of that last year, having to shield and be in a position to make sure Becky was able to have her chemo. So it did leave me in a massive dilemma. I had a real moral crisis for those couple of days when I wasn't even really off sick, I was working from home, but it did leave me in this moral crisis. On the one hand, I wanted to be conscientious and make sure that I wasn't having an impact on people's lives then and there and making their lives difficult and stressing them out when they had other things to do. But on the other hand, there's this risk of them getting the illness you have, COVID or super cold or whatever it might be. And it is a dilemma, and I really don't know where I stand on that. I'm not sure what's going to happen next time round, but I will say this, I'm glad I'm employed so that I can take those sick days. Subscribe to the channel, hit notifications, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment. And from what I found out in my research, on average 118 million sick days in the UK are used, and on average to the UK economy that costs about £77.5 billion. Now in 2016 that worked out to be about 3.6 days per employee off sick that year, but that was in 2020. Now obviously we had people that were furloughed, we had people that were working from home, and that meant it was the lowest number that we'd seen in terms of sick days for many years. In 2016, for example, the average employee was taking 6.6 sick days off per year. So before I wrap the video up, I should point a couple of things out. One, the PCR test was negative. Secondly, I'm back to training a little bit. I've been back on the treadmill, just doing some very easy runs where I guess it's kind of like the first round of couch to 5K, which I think is like a minute on and a minute off. I did 10 minutes of that, and I've also done a longer idea of a minute recovery with 2 minutes of running. Just super easy, 5 times that. 15, 16 minutes, whatever it works out to be, just to see if the chest is kind of holding up, and it seems to be okay. So that's a start. I can get back into some training lightly to begin with, which is good news. Also means that the DIY is back on. There's absolutely tons to do around the house. I haven't sort of talked much about this house, but it was built in 1935 as a shop, converted into a big house in 1975, and to be fair, most parts of the house really haven't had much done to it in the meantime. So I'm kind of calling on all my carpentry skills that I learned many decades ago when I was a kitchen fitter mainly. That was my job mainly, was a bit of roofing and a bit of kitchen fitting, to try and do the house up and try and get it pretty much where we want it to be. So there's all those challenges as well as making these videos and training and everything else, but all of that had to stop for these 3 weeks. Anyway, fingers crossed. From here on in, healthiness, is that a word? Yeah, of course it's a word. Happiness and healthiness, and it's heading towards Christmas. It's starting to feel very much like Christmas here. We've got all the decorations up and we've got all the lights up and everything else, and we have a party on the 18th, which I'm very much looking forward to. And the students feel like they're winding up, and I think in general, it's going to be a good Christmas. I'm very much looking forward to it. Anyway, more regular videos. I'll talk a bit more about how I'm going to rebuild my training over the next couple of weeks. I'll also talk about the challenge that I've got next year that's definitely set in stone, and another couple of ideas in my next video next week. And also coming, because I have started it, is the video talking about what I learned from doing the Grand Tour back in July, which I'll put out in the next couple of weeks. So keep watching the channel. If you haven't subscribed already and you're interested in triathlon and talking rubbish and nonsense like this, subscribe, hit the button down below, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and I will see you on the next video.